Well, we haven't done this in a while, but welcome to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. About 25 minutes late. I was trying to get on around 7:15-ish is what I tweeted, and that's because something invariably always comes up. I've been on the phone for just over 20 minutes now with one of my basketball sources, so that took some precedent, and nothing earth-shattering coming out of that to lend itself to what we're going to talk about tonight. But really, there hasn't been a lot of news since I last came on. The last time I did one of these, L. Ellis, the transfer guard out of Louisville, had just committed to Arkansas as the fifth backcourt piece really out of the portal to commit to the Razorbacks. There was five players that came out of basically a 2 week span, April 3rd through April 17th. So that's how long it's been when L. Ellis committed. The only things that have really happened as far as actual movement one way or the other are two Razorbacks, two freshmen, two top 100 four-star players out of the high school ranks in the 2022 class, Barry Dunning Jr. and then Darian Ford, going into the transfer portal. We have not been back to talk about that. There are some hot names right now that we are going to get into, but I want to first start off by kind of breaking down some of the math and, not only the roster numbers, but just get into these last 2 weeks because it's been quiet relative to the previous 2 weeks when you look at those five portal commitments. But that doesn't mean things in reality have been quiet for the Arkansas coaching staff, some of the players that are available and coming available for this staff to, pursue. And there are still names going in the portal, so that changes things. Those things factor in to calculations in your big board. You always hear about NBA teams or other sports on the professional levels having boards and prioritizing. Obviously, college coaches do the same thing. A guy like Eric Musselman with all the NBA and pro experience, some of his staffers probably do as good a job, if not one of the best jobs in the country, of not only figuring out what they want, but how to pursue it. They cast a wide net. You know that. A lot of contacts in the portal, well over 100 that have been reported on since the portal season really went full blast during March Madness and now as we're into the early parts of May. But going back to it, Barry Dunning Jr., since we were last on, Darian Ford after that. Both of these guys, by the way, were Gatorade Players of the Year back-to-back years in their states. Obviously, Dunning from Alabama, Ford out of Arkansas. And so it created two roster spots. I mentioned L. Ellis. When he came off the board, Arkansas was full at the number 13. You get 13 scholarships. But those two guys going to the portal opened up two spots. And again, it's worth repeating, with Arkansas having five players in the NBA draft pool, three of those are staying in for sure. Jordan Walsh and Devo Davis are the two that told everyone they were leaving the door open for a return. But while they're in that draft pool, those scholarships are open. They are open. They have to withdraw and come back to school and go through a formal process to have a shot at having a scholarship again wherever. And you would think that'd be Arkansas if they decide to do that. I've been saying for a while that I felt like both of those players, and I gave it percentages. I didn't say all the way into the pro level, but likely not to come back. That was based on what I was getting for the longest time. Even before Jordan Walsh announced he was going to test the waters, he was already training for it. And I said repeatedly on segments like this that it was a matter of time before he would actually formally come out and say he was going into the draft. So we know he's in. We know Devo's been in for a while. I've been reporting of late that if it all had to be decided right now, that I think a guy like Devo Davis is more likely to return to Arkansas. That's been a bit of a change. That's a fluid situation, and here's why. They have until May 31st, both players, all players that are maintaining their college eligibility, they have that deadline, 11:50 p.m. Right before the strike of midnight on May 31st, turning into June 1st, to withdraw from the draft and return to college. And so with their, that's still between 3 and 4 weeks away. So having said that, a guy like Devo Davis, something else could develop to help him decide maybe to stay in, because it's not always just about the opportunity to be drafted. If you get workouts with teams and you get opportunities, sometimes that's not just about getting invited to a combine, whether it's the G League combine or the main NBA draft combine, but it could just be individual opportunities with teams. Sometimes those things can be worked out. And so now you might be talking about someone guaranteeing you a roster spot in the summer league a chance to earn a two-way contract. There's all kinds of pro opportunities outside the NBA. And so while they're in their process, these things can come and go or improve or get worse. So having said that, I'm kind of laying the foundation for a guy like Devo to stay in the draft. But I think now, where I haven't thought this before, I feel better and better about Arkansas's opportunity to get him back. And I've been putting the percentage at 55-45. I still feel that way as of now. So I wanted to reiterate that, even though that's a talking point I've already done on other platforms, whether it was Pig Trail Nation or my Drive Times sports segments. We're a few days out from when I've done those, and I still feel that's about where it's at. I think Jordan Walsh, I still believe he's probably leaning more towards staying in. I have a source who believes it's 50-50. It could go either way. One that's reliable. So there's some thought process that there's still a chance for Jordan Walsh to return. Right now, again, I'm leaning towards he probably stays in. You can go out and look at mock drafts. I talked to several NBA scouts who are not decision makers, but they weigh in with their decision makers representing with the teams they represent. And most folks think that he's probably going to stay in. But again, these calculations change based on feedback that continues to come in. Walsh is one of the 4 Hogs who are in this, out of the 5 who are in this draft process, who will be, participating in the combine. There's not a lot of combine information that's been formally acknowledged out there, but 4 Hogs are going to be in it. Nick Smith Jr., Anthony Black, Ricky Council IV, and Jordan Walsh. And so there'll be varying levels likely of how much participation they'll do in the combine, because there are players that skip some of the stuff. It's a big deal. There's competition, there's measurables, there's agility testing. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on, interviews, and players kind of treat it like a menu at a buffet where they select some things they'll do, some they don't, and then some will choose to go through the full car wash and do it all. And so, again, welcome to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We're trying to kind of get caught up on things you probably already know or have thought about, maybe give just a little more insight as to why things remain fluid. It's not to give me an out and say, well, I was dancing that center line there, so I couldn't be wrong. But you can be wrong really quick, because what's true now might be not true. So you need to put the disclaimers out. And then I'm not just saying it could change. I'm trying to give ways that it changes. Like what I went through with the Devo explanation, where teams could, I've got a gnat in here or two. But these things can change the course of things. But I think any Hog fan would recognize a Devo Davis returning. We know what the resume is. And if that happens, that's huge. I've already talked about Trevor in Brazil, the first player, the centerpiece of this roster. That's a 5-star win for Arkansas. He was the first one to come back and say he was returning. That's huge. A Devo Davis is in that same 5-star conversation, because retention is a part of recruiting now. After every year, we know that. That's just a reality. But Devo Davis is going to go through his process. He didn't just jump in the draft to be cute about that. He's really going through a process to see what, if that's something that's viable for him. And that's going to continue. Although, again, and here are other things at play. NIL's at play. And sometimes there's sweeteners, things that can sweeten the pot a little bit. And those factor into decisions. And so I think there's a multitude of things that are working in Arkansas's favor right now, with a guy like Devo Davis. Now, we haven't even talked about some of the big names. I was down in Bryan, Texas over the weekend covering the Adidas 3SSB Grassroots Session 2 live eval, Muss, Arsenal, Anthony Ruda. So you had 3 Arkansas staffers down there on Friday. But I'm talking to a lot of coaches, a lot of folks that connected deep with basketball information, not only on the kids that are playing now, but players that are in the portal and things like that. And so, the word was pretty hot and heavy that Ron Holland was about to decommit. Sure enough, that happened. I've, been on record over at Hogville. I've put this on the message board that I love Arkansas's chances there. There's all kinds of ways to look at this. You've got some national guys that have weighed in on it. 2 or 3 of those I know have connections. And so, some of these things and what people are saying you could take with a grain of salt. Any blowhard can get on and do a podcast or, kind of ride coattails. But some of these guys are knowledgeable, and they're getting some of the same information I'm hearing. But look, one of the options that Ron Holland had when he committed to Texas and signed with the Longhorns We knew it came down to Arkansas, really, in Texas at the end. But the G League Ignite was one of the things he was looking at closely. That's the case again. And I know people think, well, the longer this takes, it may not for something to be announced. It may not favor Arkansas. I see some of that on Twitter and message boards. But think about it like this: he does not need a release from a letter of intent, Ron Holland, to say he's going to play for the G League Ignite. It would have been easy for him when he was decommitting to Texas if he was decided on the professional route to just go ahead and make that announcement. That's under consideration. It may be the way it goes, but I don't think it's a given. And I think Arkansas's chances, the reason I love their chances, they were right in it to the end. There were members of his family that were, Team Arkansas when it came down to a decision. And he expressed to me multiple times after taking 2 visits to Arkansas, how much he really got out of it and how much he really liked it. Now things are different. That was back in the fall. Here we are now in the spring, months and months later. There will be other schools jumping into the fray. This might end up being one of those bidding war things. But I think right now, based on where it is now, where I'll leave it at for now, is that Arkansas is in great shape with Ron Holland. We'll see how it plays out. I'm not telling you to expect a commitment from Ron Holland, but I'm telling you Arkansas's got it in a great spot there. Grant Nelson, the 6'11" versatile forward. This guy's, I won't call him a stretch four from the sense that he's just a guy that's going to shoot at a high clip from 3. Probably takes a similar volume to what a Trevor Brazil did. Not as good percentage wise, but he's a threat. But what I really like about Grant Nelson out of North Dakota State, who just got in the portal, his name's been hot in Arkansas circles, is here's a guy that has ball handling skills at 6'11" on the perimeter. And he can not only dribble drive to a shot facing up, but he can dribble drive to a spot where he turns and backs guys down. And now he's a post player. He can drop step baseline and finish. He can turn into the middle and finish. This guy has got an array of finishing moves as a ball handler at 6'11". And he does enough from 3 to keep a defense worrying about that. Third guy that put in 3 years at North Dakota State to be a first-time transfer. I mean, Arkansas is going to be in the mix for this guy. They're in it. And I tweeted out when I was down in Texas that I felt like Arkansas was going to get good news soon, and soon is relative. I think some people thought that would be a matter of days, and then I kind of clarified that a little bit more on Drive Time Sport. Maybe some of it comes out in days, matter of days. Maybe some of it's going to be weeks. But you got to look at these deadlines. Grant Nelson, who everybody's going to be after, he can take visits, he can consider his options, but he's also in the NBA draft pool. He's got till May 31st. So soon is relative, right? We're already in May. If you want something to fall in the next day or two, that's probably not going to happen. I'm hearing it not in the near future, maybe that we hear some kind of announcement. That's okay, because a lot of these guys are in a process right now that's not only what they're doing in college decision making, but also that NBA draft. I went through the names: Jordan Walsh, Devo Davis, Grant Nelson, Ron Holland's considering G League Ignite. Again, considering. He didn't jump on that bandwagon immediately after decommitting from Texas, which would be easy to do. The decommit from Texas, again, is not just a decommit. He signed a letter of intent. That's paperwork. It also puts restrictions on schools formally recruiting him while that's being sorted out. It could be something that's been sorted out and hasn't been put out publicly, or it could be something that's close to being resolved. We don't have specific answers to give on that tonight, other than understand that's part of these processes. And so where it looks like things have been really quiet the last 2 weeks because you haven't seen a lot of news, there's actually a lot going on. And I'll say this, I mentioned a while back, I posted this on HogvilleNET in the big transfer portal thread when all the hype was building up on Hunter Dickinson in Arkansas. Well, Hunter Dickinson off the board today to Kansas, no surprise there. But a while back, weeks ago, I posted, look, Arkansas was in this. They were pursuing him. They were something building there. And then I put, something has turned and it's not favorable. And I never weighed in on it again because it never changed. That never changed. Other than to say Arkansas wasn't going to stop pursuing him, but what might have been favorable for a moment wasn't in Arkansas's favor anymore, and it was going in a different direction. And not that Arkansas, it was basically a visit that was going to happen. There was a date set up for it, and then it didn't happen. So you don't just give up. If you got to a point where you got a guy, saying he's going to come visit on a specific date and that doesn't work out, maybe you stay after him and still try to work it out for some other point. But still, that was basically, you thought you had a visit set up and now you don't. So that's not working in your favor, at least at that time. And so this thing never turned around for him. But Arkansas's not laying all their eggs in one basket. It doesn't work that way. They've got other plan A's that they're working on. I've been talking a while that don't expect Arkansas just to get a big just because you think they need one. But that's something they're working on and something they're identifying and continue to do. It could be another 3-4 guy. What is Ron Holland? He's a 3-4 guy. There are guys in the portal Arkansas likes for that. So this could land multiple ways, but I think when I say plural, good news is plural. It's going to be more than one thing. It's going to be at least 2, possibly up to 3 pieces of good news before all this gets sorted out, probably by the end of May, because we know that's Memorial Day weekend. It's always a marker for Arkansas bringing its new team, the next season's team, onto campus that weekend. Sometime in that Memorial Day weekend, guys are moving onto campus. They want to have it all sorted out and figured out by then. That doesn't mean after that point that something could develop and happen. But if they can get it done before then, they will. And, the fact that withdrawal date for them from the NBA draft to return to college is May 31st, that kind of helps guys figure things out. I think part of the equation of Arkansas getting good news, up to 2 pieces of something happening, or 3 with new players or a returning player. But I think part of that equation is going to be a returning player, at least one. And I think right now that's Devo Davis. But we'll see. We'll see if that calculation changes. If it does, I'm not going to shy away from it. But I don't just jump out there and say things. I like to gather information and do my due diligence on some of that stuff, knowing full well it could be different by tomorrow. Because what else are we going to do here? We're trying to track it all down, figure it out. But as of now, I don't think we're going to see any breaking news, in the next day or so. But if something changes on that, you'll probably see me put something out on Twitter that's cryptic, or maybe on the message board, or maybe I'll be paint a direct line to it and say something's definitely about to happen. But right now, I've been saying for a while it's probably going to be quiet. Every time I say it, it has played out that way in the last couple of weeks, and I think it'll be like that a little bit longer now. But again, some of this stuff, there's formality stuff going on with withdrawal dates or letter of intent things, stuff like that are impacting some of this. And then these guys, when you look at Ron Holland, 247 Sports just today finalized their final rankings for that 2023 class. He moved to the top of it. He's now number 1. We know he's been a top 10 and then top 5-star. He's now number 1 according to 247 Sports. This is exactly what happened this time last year for Nick Smith Jr. He moved to number 1 in that service's final rankings. So Arkansas's got a chance now, back-to-back seasons, to land the number 1 player in the high school ranks. Certainly, the portal class right now, when you look at the 5 players, it's most services or people that talk about these things have Arkansas in the top 3 of the portal classes, which is kind of a trend as well when you look at it historically. Musselman's done a great job identifying the players to refill that backcourt with all the players that flooded into the draft. Most of those are backcourt players. Jordan Walsh is, when you know that he was a 3-4 at Arkansas, he's going to, he transitions to a 3-and-D wing at the next level. So, he's partly a backcourt piece even at the college level. A guy like Jeremiah Davenport, the guy they got out of Cincinnati, the grad, he kind of helps answer that out of that group of 5. The other 4 are some version of a point guard, combo guard, or shooting guard, which helps address guys like Devo being in the draft pool, Nick Smith Jr. gone, Ricky Council gone, and Anthony Black gone. I think Arkansas, obviously I've talked about this before, but I think that group of players helps Arkansas address 3-point shooting improvement, free throw percentage shooting improvement, a quickness. I thought there was a lack of quickness in Arkansas's guard core last year. I think this one brings some of that out. And then, something we probably haven't talked about enough. Look at all the experience. You got a couple of grad transfers in there, guys that have played 3 years. Keon Minifield out of Washington was the one that was a freshman. He was all Pac-12 all freshman. But you got a lot of experience, and that was something Arkansas's backcourt last year, regardless of the 5 stars and the accolades and how talented they were individually, there wasn't collective experience. playing at the Division I level. And I think the growing pains and what the staff went through to help that team grow was a little bit more, maybe a heavier lift than it needed when it was trying to address things like injuries and other things that were going on and playing one of the toughest schedules ever. So this group helps address that. Shifting to the front court, because it's important. We're talking about this stuff, and that's where everybody's eyes are right now. And we went through the names. Ron Holland, 3-and-D wing at the next level, but he'll be a similar type of role that a Jordan Walsh was and other guys we've seen at Arkansas, like Stanley and Moody, playing that 3-4 combo, that 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" range. But I think Ron Holland brings even a little bit more than some of those guys. This guy is he seems to be in the middle of every play at both ends of the floor. And you love guys that play hard and have not only a high floor IQ, but are willing to mix it up in battle. It's in their DNA. It's in between the ears, that gray matter, where they're locked in and they're battling on it to win everything. And Ron Holland is that kind of guy. And I like his emerging three-point shooting skill, his ability to put the ball on the deck from the perimeter and get downhill really quickly. He's great in transition. He'll come out of his area to block a shot or to get a rebound. He just does so much at 6'8", with really good athleticism. And again, that grit and that ability to just grind through situations at both ends. He's not afraid to stick his nose in the fray and make a play. And you love guys like that. You saw Jordan Walsh really start to evolve late in the year defensively and some of the things. Yeah, he had foul problems, but he got even tougher. He was an even tougher matchup in postseason than he was in the regular season because he became more consistent defensively. But I see a Ron Holland having similar qualities and maybe raise the bar a little bit because I think he's a little bit more advanced at the same stage offensively and then some of the other things he does. Well, we'll see if Arkansas gets him, but he's in that 3-4 combo that I said Arkansas has been identifying. There's some out of the portal. I won't go into some of the names now. You've read some of them, but Arkansas is still there. When we look at big men, there's some other names that have gone in, and I know that Arkansas is talking to. We won't go into those now. I mentioned Grant Nelson because everybody's aware of him, and that name's been out there for a minute. Arkansas is probably I say probably, I know they're in great shape with a chance at him. This is, again, another situation where you want to see it play out. So, there are people trying to do the math out there. Could you land Ron Holland, a Grant Nelson, and a Devo? I don't think there's an either or scenario in there. I think if Arkansas could get those three, they will. If they can get Jordan Walsh back, they'll have a spot for him. So some of this stuff's got to play out. I do think they're probably not. We're not going to see more than three more players come into the fold, whether it's some combination of returning or someone out of the portal / a Ron Holland, who's neither. I mean, he's getting out of a letter of intent. By the way, he's left the door open for Texas. I find that interesting as well. But a lot of players do that when they go in the portal. They'll say that their team they're currently in the portal leaving is also in the mix. So we'll see. We'll see if Texas can somehow find its way to getting Ron Holland back. I think right now that's less likely than some of the other scenarios, including Arkansas landing him. But again, I'm trying to hit some of this stuff because a lot of this stuff's already being talked about. I'm not giving you anything earth-shattering. I'm just trying to retrace some steps on things that have been said, tweeted. You got, again, national guys. Some of them know what they're talking about that are weighing in on it. There's a lot of piggyback coattail riding out there. So what? It's exciting. Everybody wants a piece of this, and so I feel good about Arkansas. Two good things are going to happen for sure. As many as three. I'll be surprised if it's four. And what would that look like? I think that would look like Jordan Walsh and Devo both coming back, and then you still have an opportunity to get a Ron Holland and maybe Grant Nelson or something like that. And I think Arkansas staff would figure it out at that point. Simple math, 2 openings now. So if 2 things happen, good, then they're good. No one else has to leave. If it's 3, 1 more's got to go. And we know it's a small little group of guys that are returning now, only 4. And if it's 4 things are going to happen, that means two more have to go. So again, I think the 4 is more of a long shot. I think 2 is the most likely scenario right now. And I think 3 is close on the heels. I think 3 things could happen. And I think that could be, that could be something where we shift and say, well, that's maybe the most likely thing, but it's going to be at least 2, maybe 3. And I do think someone in that draft pool for Arkansas right now is coming back, at least 1, likely. Again, I could have a different opinion later tonight, if I get a phone call, or tomorrow, right now, and it's been this way for a few days, almost a week now, I'm on this idea that maybe it's a Devo Davis coming back. So anyway, we're about 25 minutes in. I haven't gotten into the grassroots stuff. I mentioned a little bit, Muss and a couple of the assistants being down in Bryan, Texas, where I was at. They were there Friday. Arkansas's coaches have done a great job these first two live eval sessions spanning the last 2 weeks. Some of the names, Kayon or Boateng. All right, on Texas just took a grad transfer commit today that plays the same position as Ron. Well, I mean, they have to recruit and replace him because he's decommitted. But if there's any angle for them to get him back, they're going to take him back. This is the number one player in the country. Things change. I think NIL is going to play a big part of it. People think, because the G League Ignite is not college basketball. Don't kid yourself. That platform is really putting players in lottery pick positions. Scoot Henderson's the next one, and it's been trending that way. And they get a good chunk of money, but they also get to play against pros in that G League. And they're playing by NBA rules. And most of those G League organizations are playing through the structures that their parent teams are playing. So they really learn how to play the pro game. Yes, Eric Musselman's a pro background guy, and he knows what the league expects, but he still has to coach a college game based on college rules and doing things a certain way. He can still give them good NBA terminology and do some things they do in the NBA, but it's not the same as training on a daily basis, playing by NBA rules and going up against NBA players, which there's a lot of players that are going back and forth from the NBA and the G League, and guys that are playing maybe even more right now in the G League who are going to end up, project as good NBA players. So it's just a different level that you're facing day in and day out to help you prepare. So there's good reasons to be worried about G League for anybody Arkansas is up against that has a chance to do that. You think Mackay or Graham would be the portal if we land Nelson? Well, it's not going to be Trevin Brazil, and you've got three other players: Graham, Mackay Mitchell, and Joseph Pinion. I'm not going to go into anything more than to say the obvious. It's not going to be Trevin Brazil, so you guys can speculate on that. I'm not going to go that deep with it. I do have some information about some of that stuff. I don't want to come off as sounding, like I'm trying to hot shot you here, but things need to play out because we need to see what's really where things are going to. I mean, Arkansas is not going to not make room for Ron Holland. They're not going to not make room for guys like Devo Davis or Jordan Walsh, and they're not going to not pass up on a guy like Grant Nelson. I don't think we're looking at an either or with Grant or Ron in terms of what Arkansas wants to do. They would jump on both of those opportunities and will if it works out that way. So that's not part of the calculation. It only becomes part of the calculation of what you're going to do with guys currently on the roster is if you don't have a numbers problem. Arkansas has 2 openings right now. It could be that it lands on only 2 things shaken out. 1 returning, 1 out of the portal, 2 returning, none out of the portal, or 2 out of the portal, which I think is the least likely of a final 2 scenario landing. I think it might be 1 and 1 is where I lean toward right now. But we'll see. And then these calculations, again, can change. Mackay will be great. We need him. And Mackay was really good for Arkansas last year. And the plan has been, not there's been no rush to get him into the portal. I think Arkansas, all things being as they would like for it to be, that he would be someone that would come back. That doesn't mean that that's guaranteed to happen. I don't think I just said the one guarantee is Trevin Brazil off the current retention numbers, which is down to 4. I don't think it's not to say that those guys are on the chopping block. It's to say that some of this stuff could fall in a place where someone is on the chopping block or 2 are. And the only one to me that's 100% off limits is Trevin Brazil. There might be percentages that heavily favor some of those other guys. You can bet there are. That I'm not going to get into. Okay, so we're almost 30 minutes in. I was going through some of the grassroots. Kayon or Boateng, 5-star to Little Rock Central. Musselman and the assistants that I mentioned were courtside to watch him and the 17U Arkansas Hogs playing on Friday. Here's a guy that has continued in these first 2 live sessions, even as a 5-star, to move the needle. He's gotten offers from programs like Ohio State, Houston, several of the Stanford. When you start looking at Pac-12, there's just a lot of interest right now in Kayon or Boateng. Georgia Tech's new head coach, Damon Stoudemire, was in Little Rock today. I tweeted this out. doing the rounds, going to Central to see Boateng. 25 guard Luke Moore, who had a really good couple of sessions with the playing up with those 17 and under Arkansas Hogs. He was supposed to go to Benton to see Terrion Burgess, the class of 2025, national top 20 guy. Now, we haven't been tweeting or saying as much about him on these first two live sessions because he had a minor ankle injury in Real Deal in the Rock, that event that played out in late March. And so he hasn't played in these first two live sessions. He is cleared, though, to make a return, I'm told. And so we're going to see him moving forward. And we know the big months are June, and especially July. It's July, but you'll have scholastic events in June. A guy like him may not take part in that, but he'll be doing some stuff in May. There'll be some, it won't be live eval periods where head coaches can be there, but he'll be back playing in some of these grassroots events. But I mean, some of the names: J.J. Andrews, national top 10, Little Rock Christian Academy, class of 2026, was a freshman last year. ESPN's got him ranked the number 8 prospect already, and it's top 25 for the class of 2026. He's been putting up numbers on the Nike E16 circuit, but putting up really good numbers. And so you pay attention to a J.J. Andrews. I know Arkansas's involved. Isaiah Seeley, we don't say enough about him. 6'5", pushing 6'6", combo guard out of Springdale, Northwest Arkansas. ESPN in that same top 25 for the class of 2026, or excuse me, for 2025, jumping to that one, they've got Burgess in the top 30, and they also have Isaiah Seeley out of Springdale in that top 30. Go Razorbacks. Too bad Dickinson wants to get beat next year. I mean, Kansas has won the national title 2 years ago. And yes, Arkansas upset Kansas to go to the Sweet 16. That was great. But that was a number 1 seed they knocked off. Kansas is no slouch. No matter what's going on over there, no matter what whatever, they're a blue blood, and they roll like a blue blood, and they recruit like it. So we don't, you got to respect that. Going back to some of this stuff, I'm talking grassroots, I'm jumping back and forth because it makes me think of other things. Thinking about Dickinson and the position he plays. Thinking about a Grant Nelson. I've mentioned some of Grant Nelson's strengths. Here's a guy also that's pulling down over 9 boards a game and blocking nearly 2 shots a game. He's not a traditional banger lane clogger, but he's got size, and so he does eat up space the closer he gets to the basket, which makes a guy like that tough to deal with. Same with Trevor Brazile. Some of these guys may be more finesse and more skill than they are banger and the Kamani Johnson types or the Mikal Mitchell types. And so those folks clamoring for a big man that's a traditional beef space eater and beef, banger, that may not be what Arkansas gets, and they may be great with what they get. Even if a guy like Grant Nelson has some similar traits to a Trevor Brazile, man, he's really good. He's a really good player. And he's a matchup nightmare. Trevor Brazile's a matchup nightmare. So if you could get 2 of those on the floor, you'd work that out. If you get a Ron Holland, I mean, and so the other thing you talk about, what's the reality that everything falls just into place? Well, we don't know. We don't know that yet. And it could be that it could be a scenario where if a Ron Holland committed to Arkansas, Grant Nelson may say, you know what? I see what Trevin does. I see what Ron brings to the floor. I might need to go somewhere where, I'm going to know that I'm going to be featured a little more. Or it could be a scenario where the more the better. Let's get the best players we can, and these guys are going to be in the top rotation, and let's roll with it. So you just never know what players are going to come down thinking and how these things are moved around the board when the pieces do start to fall into place. And I'm spending a lot of time talking about the what ifs, and I don't want to build false impressions that Arkansas is specifically going to get 1, 2, or 3 of these guys, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I've kind of laid it out there because the chances aren't that it's going to just be lightning strike and fall everything into Arkansas's place, but it could. There's a reality that it could. It may not be the highest percentage reality, but it exists. And so